It's a profound shift. One of the longest running and bloodiest conflicts in modern times, the PKK uprising, and now the disarmament of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK, after over 40 years of armed struggle against the Turkish state. What began in the 1980s as a militant campaign for Kurdish rights has ended, at least symbolically, with fighters burning their weapons uh, in a in a symbolic demonstration of um, I of a laying down of this way of life in northern Iraq, and the moment is laden with history, controversy, and consequence. It's no mere local affair, but a development um, of the events in Turkey itself, across Turkey, Iraq, Syria, Iran, even the international order. It has deep implications for these countries. The PKK was founded by Abdullah Öcalan in the 1970s, taking up arms in 1984 with the vision of creating an independent Kurdish state. Over time, its goal evolved into demanding greater autonomy and rights for Kurds, who constitute roughly 15 to 20% of Turkey's population. And the conflict has claimed over 40,000 lives, scarring southeastern Turkey, displacing hundreds of thousands, and fed cycles of distrust and violence. And for decades, Turkey, the United States, the European Union, and others have labeled the PKK a terrorist organization. Turkish security forces have waged relentless counterinsurgency campaigns, not only within Turkey, but across the border in Iraq, where the PKK built fortified bases in the mountains. Civilians, meanwhile, have paid a heavy price. Farmland abandoned, villages bombarded, entire communities uprooted. And the breakthrough now underway was seeded months ago in clandestine negotiations involving Turkish officials, the pro-Kurdish DEM party, and most crucially, Abdullah Öcalan himself, imprisoned on Imrali Island since 1999 when he was captured in a remarkable action involving the Greek Secret Service in Africa, and I remember it vividly. Actually, in February 2025, Öcalan issued an historic call for the PKK to dissolve itself and end its armed struggle, describing it as a voluntary transition from armed conflict to democratic politics and law. And this has led to the PKK's May announcement of its dissolution as an armed group, and finally to the ceremony held today in northern Iraq's Suleimania province. And 30 fighters, including senior commanders, burnt their weapons in a cave, a potent, if small-scale gesture of laying down arms. Importantly, this was not a surrender of authority. It's the fighters destroyed their weapons rather than hand them over to any authority, underlining their insistence this is self-directed, dignified transition rather than defeat. And the process is to continue through the summer and monitored by Turkish, Iraqi, and Kurdish regional officials, facilitated by the DEM party. And the Turkish President Erdogan has hailed this as ripping away the bloody shackles from Turkey's legs. He also knows the political value of such a spectacle. He's attempting to position himself as the architect of the terror-free Turkey, an image that might help him consolidate power in the face of the electoral headwinds and economic pressures that are mounting. The disarmament is not confined to Turkey's internal affairs. The PKK's presence has long destabilized Iraq, where Turkish military operations repeatedly violated Iraqi sovereignty in pursuit of PKK bases. Villages were emptied, civilians killed, farmland burned, and Iraqi Kurdish leaders, while sympathetic to the PKK's grievances, have resented its militarization of their territory. Syria is another dimension. The Syrian Democratic Forces, a US-backed coalition dominated by Kurdish fighters, includes elements Turkey sees as PKK affiliates, and Ankara has pressed both Washington and the Syrian Kurds to cut these ties, with the PKK's disarmament now adding momentum to that demand. Iran too has faced Kurdish insurgency connected to the broader PKK movement. A weakened, disarmed PKK could reduce cross-border tensions, although Iran's internal Kurdish question is hardly resolved. Beyond the region, NATO allies such as the US will watch closely. Washington has long struggled to balance its alliance with Turkey, with its reliance on Syrian Kurdish forces against ISIS, but a weakened PKK potentially eases some of this diplomatic strain. Yet, this isn't a time to romanticize a movement. Symbolic disarmament in a cave doesn't automatically erase 4 decades of mistrust and bloodshed. Many Kurds doubt Erdogan's sincerity, citing past failed truces and his government's authoritarian drift, or what they call his government's authoritarian drift. Human rights campaigners warn that Kurdish cultural and political demands remain largely unmet, nor is it clear that all PKK factions, especially those outside Iraq, will follow orders from Öcalan to disarm. And Erdogan himself faces accusations of instrumentalizing the process to buy Kurdish votes, secure constitutional change, and extend his rule beyond the term limits. In this sense, peace may be less a moral commitment than a political strategy. But the disarmament of the PKK represents a rare opportunity and a magnificent achievement. It's a chance to end a devastating war, to redirect resources from conflict to development, to mend the bitterly divided fabric of particularly southern Turkey and its neighbours, and it will demand extraordinary political will, trust building, and a genuine commitment to pluralism and democracy. As Abdullah Öcalan himself put it from his prison cell, this is not a loss, but an historic achievement if, and only if, democratic politics can replace the logic of war.